Are you a real estate investor that feels like you make a good amount of money, but maybe you'll always feel broke? Well, today's episode is going to be the episode for you to listen to. Probably get a lot of value out of. I have my good friend David Richter with Simple CFO Solutions on the show today. David and I go way, way back. We were a part of the same wholesaling organization. It's where I got my stomping grounds for real estate investing back 12 to 13 years ago. We were part of a large organization that wholesaled real estate out here in the Midwest. So I got my start 13-ish years ago in that organization with him. Gary Harper, who a lot of people in the industry know as well, was part of that with a lot of other great people. And through that process, we learned quite a bit about running a real estate business. I was in marketing. David was in the financials. And there was a lot that came out of that. David, after that, had left and started his agency with Simple CFO. And he has a process and a system that works for helping people create financial systems for their real estate business. If you ever heard of the book Profit First by Mike Michalowicz, this is actually a direct offshoot of that book, blessed by Mike Michalowicz himself. I believe it was forwarded by him as well. So David has a book called Profit First for Real Estate Investors, which we'll have linked down in the description below. You can go check out. But on this episode, we talk about quite a few things, but the number one thing that stuck out to me was the way that people run their fundamentals of financials in their real estate business is one of the most overlooked things. We talk about budgets. We talk about how to tweak your marketing budgets when you feel like you're in growth mode because maybe you want to allocate more marketing to it. Maybe you want to hire a sales staff. Maybe you're hiring your first lead manager and you're not sure what to allocate for that. David goes through a system and a process for you to be able to decide when to make those moves, because it's important to make sure you understand that, because we both, David and I, know people personally that have actually spent themselves dry out of business just because they over marketed. Maybe they broke their system. There's too many leads coming in. They couldn't keep up with the leads and they spent so much money where they literally marketed themselves out of business. I actually know people like that. You don't want to be that person. So this is going to be a really great episode, a lot of insight on financials, which we need. We need this kind of plugged into our marketing systems and especially our sales systems as well, in order to be able to run healthy and successful businesses as real estate investors. So you guys are going to really enjoy this. If you want to connect with David, you can go to simplecfosolutions.com. Once again, I'll have that down in the description below. Make sure you do take advantage of that. Go grab his book. I believe you can get it on Amazon for pretty dirt cheap in regards to what you're going to be able to, implement and get value out of from it. So you guys are going to enjoy this episode. Make sure you connect with David with the links down below and have a good time. Enjoy. Learn a lot. Welcome back to the REI Marketing Weekly. It's your host, Josh Culler, and I have my very, very good friend, longtime friend, David Richter on the line today with Simple CFO. David, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. I still think it's amazing. Like, we grew up, kind of to get the right, Josh, like back in the day, and I don't talk to hardly anyone from back then, but like, I'm glad we've kept in touch because we took a lot of the same journey. So I'm glad to be back on.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll kind of give like a briefing of me and David's history in the intro, which you guys have already heard. But David and I worked together for quite some time, along with our good friend Gary Harper and several other amazing people. And David has a calling, if you will, in the financial space when it comes to managing your real estate businesses. Now, David is the author of the book Profit First for Real Estate Investors. So obviously, if you're listening to this episode, you are either interested in real estate investing or you're already a real estate investor looking to dial up your marketing efforts. And today's episode, I figured the best thing to do, which we've had David on the episode on a podcast before, but this was years ago, back before we took the break. And one of the things that I thought would be the kind of the best route to go down, because this is in David's area of expertise, is to talk about the financials of marketing. Because I think, David, you probably see these numbers more than I do, but I'm sure you come across clients or people that you work with, or even people that are looking for some consulting that really have no clue what to throw at their marketing budgets, not sure like how much can I allocate to a budget for hiring a sales staff or an acquisitions person or even a virtual assistant. So I kind of want to dial into, we'll stay on the marketing side for now. Maybe if we have enough time, we'll go into like staffing and that sort of thing. Because I do, like, obviously this podcast is about marketing, but this podcast, we cross over marketing and sales quite often because they are sometimes kind of intertwined with each other. So a good place to start when it comes to budgeting and setting budgets for, let's say, your marketing, any marketing that a real estate investor is going to do to generate leads. what's kind of the process that you walk people through in order to be able to see what they can allocate to their marketing budgets?
So, I love this question because the first thing is, do we have anything to work with? Like, do we know the numbers currently? The number one statement I hear from a lot of business owners is we make money, but we feel broke. We don't know where our money's going, what's happening. That to me is like, that's a first step. Like, let's get some clarity here to even know what's coming in, what's going out the door, and simple numbers. I'm not saying even anything complicated, but like, do you know what's coming in? Do you know your expenses monthly going out? Like, are you keeping any of the money as well? And then from there, that's why, like what Josh said, it feels like a calling because with what I've gone down the road with Profit First, it's such a simple system for business owners to understand where their money's going. And it gives like target percentages based on the size of your business that you should shoot for the different areas of your business. And one of them is the operational expenses. And especially when you're a newer business, the biggest operational expense you'll have is marketing, which it's really an investment. I mean, that's really what it is. And even when you first start out, like if you're doing $0 to $250,000 in revenue, the target percentage like of that money that you're making is like 30% for OpEx, because all the rest is basically going towards you, the owner. Because if it's just you and you don't have a staff or anything, like you need to eat and live, and like make sure that you're paying yourself. But then basically we tell people that 30% that's suggested is mainly going to go towards marketing. Like if you're upfront, like almost all of that. So if you make $10,000 on a wholesale deal, 3,000 of that at least should probably go towards the marketing budget no matter what. Like that's where it also helps you gain clarity of, okay, how much did I just make? How much should go towards here? And how much do I have to work with? Like you were asking, Josh, and then it just scales from there, which then OpEx becomes a bigger percentage as you grow because you're going to have staff, like you were saying, Josh, and other things. But the biggest percentage that you're going to be spending on is usually marketing. And the next thing that once you start hiring people, that quickly becomes like neck and neck with marketing. That's where marketing, though, is a little easier to see the return for me because like, unless it's a salesperson on the team, you can see how much they're making you and like how much, but how do you measure an admin person? Usually it's by the amount of hours that you don't have to do something and you can go out and drive revenue. But like for marketing, I can see if I go down this channel and I spend this much money, how much do I return? And like, even if it's branding and if it's more of like a big overarching strategic thing, you can still see how much did I spend overall in marketing and how much am I making, just overall. So you can break it down into channels, but then you can also see what's my overall, return just for what I've spent in total for marketing. So it's one of the easiest ones to track if you know what you're looking for. We like to implement more of a marketing KPI type sheet if they don't have something like that already. It's part of our dashboard now where it's like you see the different channels and you can see the returns on the spend and like what you're doing. So that's what we're looking for. I would probably never have the marketing be more than, like 30, 40, 50%, probably more than 40%. Like if you're going up there, then probably your marketing isn't as effective. It's like if you're getting a 1-to-1, I spend $1 and, and then I only make $1, that's no bueno. It's like we got to get to where we're making at least 2, 3, 4, 5x return because that pushes your marketing spend percentage down, of what you're spending overall, what you're bringing in. So there's a lot right there, but that's like just the overall general gist of like how I think about marketing from the financial perspective. And like, number one, do you even have the clarity to know, like, or do we need to clean up stuff first?
Yeah, now this could be a subjective answer to the question I'm going to have, but
Yeah.
how often should somebody be tweaking those numbers for their marketing? Like, for example, obviously, like if the more your revenue grows and then the amount that you're spending on marketing percentage will start to drop a little bit, and that spread becomes this. How often are you tweaking that? Like if you wanted to, like I know people that'll talk about, if they wanted to scale, they'll spend a little bit more on marketing for a few months and then it'll, bring that revenue up and then eventually level back out. Like what's the tweaking process? Let's say somebody already kind of knows their numbers. They have a good budget set. They know what it looks like currently. How often are we tweaking those numbers to maybe amplify what we're doing in marketing?
I think, like you said, it will be a subjective answer, but if it was more objective or like around a system that was in place, like you could use those different benchmarks for the target percentages. Like if you start to make $250,000, that's like the first ceiling or the first column, where you're moving from making 0 to 250 to 250 to 500. And if it's like, if you start there, then you start to tweak the percentages and the goal percentages. It changes from 30% to the OPEX and like all of your operational expenses to 40% once you make 250 to 500. So you could use that scale, which is why also I love like the profit first framework, because it almost gives you benchmarks as you grow for when to adjust those. But I would also say too, it's very reliant on, especially if you're in real estate, if you're a wholesaler, you can play with these percentages a lot more as well too, because you might be really profitable. Like, and when you start off, you might not be spending 30% on, out the door in marketing, and you're still getting like crazy returns, and you don't have overhead yet, and you don't have all this stuff. And it's like, well, do we want to, transition over to this, and pour more into marketing? But you still have percentages for your profit. That's the thing that most people miss out on though, Josh. They think they can just pour money into it and that's going to solve the problem. When if they don't have a healthy business and they don't know their numbers, they could be scaling like the cancer in the business that's killing them.
Yeah, you and I both know people that have actually almost marketed themselves out of business because their marketing went so well that they broke their systems. Maybe they didn't have sales staffing, they didn't have proper operational procedures and stuff like that.
Or they were spraying and praying. They were just like, good God, I hope this new channel works.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, how's your old channel doing? Do you know how it's doing well? And what's the return? And like, how long could you spend this money before you go out of business? Like a lot of people don't even think about some of those questions to ask. And that's where we're just trying to get them to ask better questions before they go down that road, which is like, okay, if I do go down this road of marketing, of like this new channel, how long can I sustain it before I need to either see a return or I cut it off? And it's like they just don't give themselves benchmarks, and they just like you said, we see people spend themselves out of business.
You were dipping into my brain right there. So my next question was going to be how far, and again, this might be subjective. I think like that this is the truth about financials and businesses. It's like every business is different. But let's just say from a general wholesaler, just because that's a good majority of the clientele that you work with. So let's say they start up a new channel, they start up TV ads, and then they start spending. They have a certain amount dedicated to it. They have the ability to spend that money. How far down the road are we looking? I mean, this is a question I get often, like how long should I spend money on this marketing channel before I cut it off and decide it doesn't work? Because, and it's subjective to marketing too. Like I'm in the organic space, and I mean, you've had podcasts and you do content and stuff like that. So, sometimes it can be like immediate. Sometimes it could take like a year to do it. But from a general marketing spend with a wholesaler, what's that distance that you typically advise?
Now, if it's a direct channel, like you were saying, more organic, which is more like you're not exactly sure how to quantify it. Yeah, it's
so if we're talking about advertising,
it's more advertising. A good rule of thumb is 90 days. And if I just had to do a general rule of thumb, like how long can I do at least 90 days and see a return? But I would also say, if you want better statistics, are there other people doing that type of like spend in your marketplace for that? And would they be willing to share? Like if you're part of a group, that's honestly the power of some of these groups is not in just the connection there. It's like the connection with your people that are in your market or have a similar market to you across the country and like willing to open up. Like you gave a great example, TV. TV is usually one of the ones where they have to spend a good amount of money. And so they could be spending $10, $20, $30, $40, $50,000 over that first 90 days. They want to make sure they're getting a good return. So what's the typical return? And not just from the company telling them like, this is what they're doing, like maybe calling around and like if they have a network or going to your local meetup or going to a meetup across town, whatever, to be like, okay, what do I do? And like, what are other people doing and getting some data? But I would say a general rule of thumb is, can you sustain it for 90 days without it breaking your business? If you can't for the marketing channel, I would rethink it. Or is it a more like short-term marketing channel where you're expecting a 30-day return? And if you can't see it in 30 days, it's like you got to pull the plug. So that's where it's like, I would say TV, anything that's a bigger spend, you almost have to give it a shorter leash, which is like, okay, if I'm spending this on the TV, it's TV. They should be picking up the phone then or filling out a form. I should be calling them. I should know within 30 days for TV, like, is this a good investment or not in my market? And if it didn't happen in the first 30 days, is there anything specific to this area? Like it's January and like are people inside and watching TV, or is this the middle of summer, when I started TV and like and everyone's outdoors and they're not on the TV as much, or like is my target market even watching TV at this point, and like who I'm speaking to. So like TV, and the more you spend, the response, like what kind of response and how fast are you trying to get it on the back end? Because organic is the opposite. It's almost like how much money do you have to spend in invest for the long term? Because you're really not wanting this to be a quick term thing. This is something that if you invest over the long haul, you will see the dividends and returns. And like from like you said, the podcast, and like we've done work before, there's still things that we get from our podcast and from episodes years ago, where people just randomly click on it, or like they like the name of the podcast, or like the search engine, pops it up because they asked the specific thing that we covered in that title. So I would say, like, for the short term in the advertising, the more you're spending and the quicker the response rate, the shorter. But rule of thumb, I wouldn't go more than 90 days without trying to see a return, of at least the 3 to 5x.
Interrupting this podcast episode to tell you guys that this podcast is managed and produced by Color Media Productions. Yes, shameless plug, that's my company. However, we do this for a lot of other people as well. Most people that we work with are in the real estate investing space. So if you're listening to this podcast specifically, you probably are a real estate investor, given it's called the REI Marketing Weekly. If you're somebody that either wants to start a podcast or you have one going and it's becoming a little bit of a hassle, you're looking to transition to somebody that works a little bit better with a fluid motion in terms of you get the recordings done and then they do everything else. Well, that's what we do. We do fully managed podcasts from start to finish, video, audio, show noting, the graphics, publishing, everything that goes into it. It's a full service business that we run here in a service for you as a real estate investor if you are running a podcast. Additionally, we also do social media and YouTube management as well. So all of that being on the organic side, if you are interested in learning more about working with us and just recording content with guidance and strategy set by myself personally, and then not doing anything else after that, where we're taking care of everything from start to finish, then make sure you go check us out at colormedia.com, CULLER media.com. Hit us up there and we can learn more about working together, hop on a phone call and see what we could do for you. Now back to the episode.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think that's that's where we talk about I'm glad you made the deviation, because I think that's where we talk about the difference between like organic run content and advertising. Because advertising, like any of my content, you'll find somewhere with me kind of making the differences, because people, the expectation levels have to be different. And with advertising, it's a sprint. You can definitely get money back quicker when you spend it. And there's a lot of subjectivity to that too. Like, did you give it the proper amount of effort to it? Did you have the right messaging, the right brand? Like, there's
pick up the dang phone. Like, it's like,
Yeah.
it's like you said, marketing and sales are so tied together. Like, you could do the best job marketing and pay the best people and get leads in the door. But if you're not picking up the phone, if you don't have a great sales process, or like you're converting, like, then it's not the marketing's, fault. Then it's like, it's upstream. It's in the sales process.
Absolutely. So we talked about, you've brought up profit first a couple times. I want to give the opportunity, somebody that is listening that maybe hasn't implemented profit first in their business, or even hasn't even heard of it.
Yeah.
You wrote the book years ago, Profit First for Real Estate Investors, a direct branch of the actual Profit First book with Mike Michalowicz. Can you just give a brief rundown of what, just in the nutshell, what is Profit First and how is it like the most useful financial system for real estate investors?
So when I was saying that a lot of people make money but feel broke, it's because they get the money in and they don't know what to do with it. And that's where they've read, usually, if they're in real estate, the other big book they've read is Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And all throughout that book, he says, pay yourself first. What I believe Profit First to be is like the fulfillment of that statement through a system. Like knowing where to put your money with an actual process versus just like it's words on a page and like you should do this. So Profit First is in its essence, it's a cash flow management system. You're going to manage money no matter what. Like money, if you make money, you're going to have to touch it through your bank account, right? It's like it comes in and you're going to have to move it and you're going to have to do something with it, spend it on marketing or spend it on different things, to get it to come back. And Profit First is the envelope method. That's the system. It's literally the envelope method where you set up different bank accounts and you name every dollar that's coming in, and it's giving you clarity as a business owner of where that money's going. So that's really at its core. It's leveraging what you're doing as a business owner, opening up your bank account, looking at your money and seeing like, where are my dollars and like, what is it assigned to? So that's really at its core what it's all about, because the benefit of that is clarity. Clarity really is the power that a lot of entrepreneurs are seeking in their business, because they want to know, can I spend this money? Should I spend this money? Can I go out there and start a new marketing channel? Can I go out there and hire this next person? Like, can I do this thing? And a lot of people just run by the seat of their pants, and you can't do that to build a multi-million-dollar business that's sustainable. So that's where, Profit First comes into place to make sure you've got exactly what you need and where the money should be going.
Yeah, absolutely. I was turning my head if you're watching the video because I'm looking for the book. I know I have your book up here somewhere, and I probably should have had it out already. In the next question, I'll look for it real quick. I can show it on screen, but David's got it right there behind him too. But here's the thing. I personally run Profit First with David's company, Simple CFO, for years. And it definitely got me on the right track, I will say that. And I'm a different little animal because I'm a marketing agency and not necessarily a real estate investor. But I believe the principles of the money management remain the same regardless. So I completely bless it, and I completely endorse what David has to offer. Now, kind of switching gears a little bit, if we talk about staffing, now we're talking about first it was operational marketing. So it's something that maybe it's a service that we're buying into, a third-party service provider that is running marketing for us, TV, agency, maybe a Facebook ad agency or whatever it is. We're spending money on marketing that way. Now we talk about staffing. Let's take, for example, we have somebody on our team that is, we're needing to fulfill a lead manager because leads are starting to come through the door. We spent the marketing. We had the right budgeting. We're getting returns on it. So now we're getting leads through the door, but I can't handle all the leads that are coming through the door. I need somebody to help me on the phones. What type of process do you put people through or advise them to go through in order to allocate proper spend for somebody that's going to be staffed on their organization like that?
That's why, again, if people are wondering what the heck I'm referring to is this target allocation percentages inside the Profit First system. There's a whole chapter on that of the different percentages you should allocate towards the different expenses of the business or to pay yourself, things like that. And one of the ones is the operational expenses. So a general rule of thumb, a good rule of thumb in business is at the $250,000 marks are when you can start to think about, okay, let me get someone on the team and this person can now start to take some of this stuff off my plate so I can get to that next level. And that's where I would say if you're starting to make $250,000 in gross profit or revenue in your business, so if you're a wholesaler and you've done $250,000 in assignment, you might want to get a full-time employee. Before that, you might get a virtual assistant or something to help you and someone at a lower cost to come in and do some of the admin type work. I would also say too, if you're going after your first hire, it should either be someone that helps you directly, like a personal assistant, or someone that's a virtual assistant that helps you with a lot of your admin tasks, or a bookkeeper, someone to come in to do your books, because that is not what's going to make you the money. It's just going to show you where you can, spend and make the money. And then as far as how much should I spend overall, and this was Josh and I worked in a company that we were doing about 25 deals a month at our highest point, but we were spending about 26 worth of deals out the door. It was an interesting ride, to say the least. One of our biggest downfalls was we were paying 25 people at that time, and I remember looking at the books that we were 70% of all the revenue was going towards payroll and people on that, where a healthy payroll is 30%, 35% or under. That's really where you should be looking at payroll is, if I hire this person, is this going to push it over the 30, 35%? And if I do hire them, how much higher is it going to be? Is it going to be the 40, 45, where if they come in and they help me produce, or they come in and they help me actually go out there and, lock up more deals or whatever, that they will pay for themselves over time and I can push that down to the 35, 30%. But if you hire someone and it pushes it to 60, 70, 80, 90% of what you're bringing in, that's probably a red flag right there. Is oh shoot, I'm way over now. Even if they come in and they do a bang-up job, I'll still be at 50%, payroll or whatever. You need to make sure it's a realistic target. That's where I come back to Josh too. They need to have that clarity to know, where do I stand right now today for all of marketing and payroll, or if wherever I am right now. And if I hire this person, what percentage would that push me to? And is it an unhealthy percentage that's going to throw me way out of whack versus like, okay, I'm good right now with where it is.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's very insightful. And in that organization you or I were a part of, there's a lot of lessons learned and many stages of that. And that was probably one of the biggest takeaways I took away through that process. And even when I was younger, I wasn't even in business technically at the moment, and I kind of knew something was off. And it's just like a lot of it too is, when you know your proper benchmarks, like you're talking about, like there was years where even I struggled with being close to like between like 50 and 60% of my income, was being expensed to salaries and payroll. And that's just not, and even though it's slightly different because like I really don't have a whole lot of marketing spend, most of my expense is going to be payroll, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't have like inventory of stuff. I don't have flips that are going on. It's an agency, so it's going to be manpower really. And maybe 3 to 5% is going to be like subscriptions and stuff like that. But
sure. Yeah.
I still believe that like being closer to that 30% is definitely the way to go. But like that's something that I'm consistently trying to keep in check, is that percentage as well. And that's definitely helped with creating breathing room. What I would say.
Oh yeah, and I teach this stuff, and I've had troubles with that over the years. Like it's like just because you know it, it's another thing to put it into practice. But when you have it staring you in the face is when it's different. Like that's where a lot of people don't know that, and so they're just like, "Oh, good God!" Like I hope this works out.
Trying to grow, yeah, and
if you're trying to grow,
it can get out of hand and
very quickly.
Like, and then what I found myself doing, which I'm sure people that are listening now, and you've seen too, is start to justify, like, no, I'm just growing. Like this, I'm hiring more people. Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, you just have to be careful with that.
Yeah,
so,
100%.
We're getting towards the end here, but one thing, you've worked with so many different businesses. One of the things that I really want to lock into, which you probably already mentioned in some way throughout this recording, because I'm assuming a lot of the things that you see in business is just repeated in every other business, right? So what are some of the biggest pitfalls and downsides to financials that real estate investors are managing when it comes to marketing or sales that you see is something like that needs to get fixed, that needs to get like it, but it's the same thing in almost every business that might be a more consistent problem to deal with?
Well, the first thing is, even before marketing and sales, is they don't know. Like there is no clarity. Like they've got the wrong person in there. If they do know what's going on, or like if they do have that clarity, then it is getting it out of hand. Like it's too much, too quick, and they don't have a plan. Like that's the big thing is a lot of people, you probably see this too, like in marketing, like tell me what to do, Josh. And then you might give them a plan. Do they run that plan? Do they actually execute it? And it's like on the financial side, it's more like, okay, you can have the knowledge that you should be under 35%, but like, are you doing that? And are you actively working towards it? Versus just, like I said, a lot of people just hope and pray this works out, or like this new marketing campaign, and they don't give it the actual intentionality that it deserves. So I would say that's a big one. If they already have it in place, and we're talking marketing and sales specifically, I would also say too, on the sales side, like that is so many, I see that's over and over again. It's not the lack of leads that's killing you. It's your conversion rate. And so it's really like you're focused on the wrong question. A lot of business owners aren't asking themselves the right question. They're just going after like the lowest hanging fruit. Well, if I had more leads, we'd be closing more deals. And it's like, let me see how many leads you are getting and how many, and is it really a leads issue, or is it really like, no, let me see your upstream process too, and what's your conversion rate, because that's what all your business is made up of, like the most important percentages for you to be tracking, and one of them is conversion rate from a lead to actually like where you stand on their front door to are you actually getting a contract, like with that person. And so I think that's another thing people miss out on, is if they're not tracking some of those just very basic fundamental percentages of that, then they can spend all the money in marketing in the world, but they're never going to close what they want to close because they don't have that conversion rate. So I think those are two big ones for the marketing and then the sales side that are kind of married together that we just see over and over again. Because even though they know it's important to track, sometimes they can't connect the benefit of tracking. And the benefit of tracking is you need less leads because you will convert more and you'll have more money actually from the leads you're already getting in the door. And then one of our issues, Josh, was like back at it. Like I remember we went and spoke to Dan Toback, I think. at that time, or one of the Todd Toback, and he's like, "Are you following up?" He said that to me and Wayne, and he's like, "No," and we said, "What do you mean?" We weren't even following up back then. It's like, oh my gosh. So it's like, are these just some of the where are the like fundamentals, and are we doing those, and are we doing those well? And are we tracking the fundamentals? And like sometimes for the business owner, they really need to see, okay, just because I track it, what does that really mean? And what's the benefit for me? And that's where it's like being able to explain that.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, that's super insightful. I think there's a lot of it's literally like what we've been talking about is more fundamental stuff that people just miss out on and overlook, or they don't label it as important. And I think that those are like fundamentals are the key. You can't look past them. And if you do, then you're going to get your ass bitten off like somewhere down the road at some point. It's going to happen. So you just got to be careful. But David, this has been an awesome episode. Definitely want to have you back. I was sifting through my books and I found this good old boy right here.
Oh, that's like pre-profit first. That's like a mini profit first.
What I realized, David, is I actually remembered that. So I obviously had one of your books, and then there was somebody that's a friend of mine that's getting into real estate, and I gave them the book, and now I don't have one. No, I need to reorder. I need to order a fresh book. But I do have this bad boy right here. But
awesome.
Do you do me a favor? Just talk about the book, a little bit about what you have to offer audiences, if you have any type of content or anything that they can kind of get a hold of you with.
Yeah, I like giving away the book because like no one is teaching this stuff out there. Like a lot of this stuff is how to make money, which is what you need. But then also as a business owner, you need to keep it too. Making money and keeping money are two different skill sets. So that's the keep money skill set. If you want that, that's what the book is all about. Profit First for Real Estate Investing, the book that I wrote back in 2021 now it was published. So it's been almost 4 years now. If you go to simplecfo.com/gift, you can actually download the book there. That's where I give like the ebook, audio book. If you want the print book, it's on Amazon. We also do a fractional CFO service that implements Profit First and is more of like financial leadership and mentorship coaching. Like that's where we really want to help you on business financial strategy. And then that's the second page there after that if you need that type of help. Or if you're new in real estate, just grab the book and start to implement this stuff. So on your next deals, you can be more profitable or your first deal. So simplecfo.com/gift can get you there.
Absolutely. Guys, we'll have that all linked down in the description below in ways that you can get a hold of David. Appreciate your time, man. This has been a lot of fun and very, very good information. And I'm sure people are going to take this and do something with it and learn a lot. So appreciate your time,
me, Josh.
Awesome. Guys, that's going to do it for today's episode. Once again, everything that David mentioned is going to be linked down in the description below in the show notes. So make sure you go check that out and take full advantage of it. Once again, we have used David and the services of Simple CFO for years, 5 years probably, and fully endorse it. And I know a lot of people that have had a lot of success with it. So make sure you go check it out. Thank you guys for listening today. If you haven't already, make sure you have subscribed to the show. Share it around with some friends that you think might need some help with their marketing or their sales in the real estate investing space. Thank you so much for joining, and we'll catch you guys on the next one. Take it easy. See ya. All right.